In Where Winds Meet, you may be missing out in a ton of damage by not using the correct mystic skills. So I personally have obtained every single one of them, upgraded them all to tier 3 to test out their damage output. I'll leave a link to the datasheets below. But let's go through each of those mystic skills and find out which ones you should be using, at least to top the damage charts in these boss fights. So we start by having a look at Lion's Roar. When you upgrade this thing to maximum, you could see it has the potential for huge damage output. However, like the category implies, this thing is just for AoE. You need to have this toad venom for it to really do any good damage, and in terms of its vitality cost and cooldown, it is not worth using in a boss fight, even when you have the Leaping Toad's venom applied. We will then have a look at Leaping Toad, and this does, when upgraded to max, have a lot of damage potential. You will deal damage with it when you enter the form, and then you can jump and jump again, along with a third time as a golden frog. When you combine all this damage together, it adds up to over 1,200% of your base weapon damage, but what holds it back is the vitality cost. While you perform actions in combat, you gain vitality, and if you want to top those damage boards, you need to be spending that vitality wisely to output good damage, and Leaping Toad just ain't it. Those extra pounces cost 15 vitality each on top of an already 25 vitality cost, meaning a total of 55 for that damage output, along with its cast time just being a bit too long. So we move on to Ghostbind. This does look pretty cool, but even when upgraded to max tier 3, it's not much damage, because this attack's only going to hit once if you have only one target. So yeah, that adds up to not much damage compared to all of the other abilities. And with a 30 vitality cost, it is just really not worth using. Next is Guardian Palm. When it's upgraded to tier 3, it gets the new ability to deal a serious amount of damage. Unfortunately, however, this is not really practical, as the animation is far too long for this to actually deal much damage, compared to being able to just cast some other abilities in that time. If you're not aware how to trigger this thing, if you actually want to get that 5 meters effect, you have to double jump, then press Q, and then the ability. And then you get this big ass animation and that big hit of damage with the explosion afterwards. And you can do this while you're flying too. So you go up really high in the air, you press Q and then the ability. And then you get this big long nosedive all the way to the ground, which is very funny. But yeah, it's just not worth using unless you want to be getting that theatrical hit at the start of a fight. So next is Flaming Meteor, another theatrical ability. When it's on tier 3, it also has the potential for a serious amount of damage, but its vitality cost is a seriously high amount. And again, the animation is just so long that its damage output is not worth it. You can see on the table here, it's got some potential, but at 60 vitality cost, it's not really worth it. So now we go to the single target control skills. We have Talon Strike. When upgraded to tier 3, it has this damage potential. And I will just point out, you can upgrade all of your abilities to tier 3 simply by resetting your other abilities. You get back 100% of the resources until we get the next breakthrough. So this is the point in time that you should be testing these out for yourselves, experiencing the animations and figuring out which suits your playstyle or which just performs best. But Talon Strike, yeah, this ain't it. It's more of a PvP thing with the ability to chip a target's chi down. You can see it's a series of slashes like this, but it doesn't add up too much. The main benefit is breaking target's guard and dealing chi damage. On top of that, it does have a very low vitality cost and cooldown, so you could spam it, but again, it's not worth it. But then we have Yaksha Rush, which when I initially looked at it, led me to believe it would deal a serious amount of damage. Like this value plus this value on such a low vitality cost and cooldown. But unfortunately, however, you do not gain that extra second hit unless you break somebody's guard. So rather than it being pretty much the best ability to use for damage output here, its effect gets halved without the break to the opponent's block, which is just not what you're doing against PvE bosses. So it really ends up just not worth using. Then we have Free Morph, which is quite the challenge to obtain, since you have to spend so much AFK time with this boss in order to get that eye filled up next to his HP bar there. And only by that time that eye is filled up are you allowed to go and dunk on the boss and actually kill him. If you don't get the eye full and you kill him, you don't get the Mystic skill. That's the same way you get the Flaming Meteor from this boss by filling that eye, by blocking the red attacks. But this Free Morph, once upgraded to maximum tier 3, looks like it has some decent damage. The animation is not bad at all, but unfortunately it has such a high vitality cost of 35. So like others, it is not worth using here for that damage output. It has a pretty low score. Then we look at Wolflike Frenzy. I really like this ability. The animation is really satisfying here, but unfortunately, even when on max tier 3, the damage does not add up to enough to be worth that vitality cost, as you can see with its score. But next, we have the ability Soaring Spin. Super low vitality cost. The only issue is its cooldown. When this is on tier 3, you can see how much that damage adds up to, and it is not something you want to be missing out on. The only problem I have with this ability is the fact it is so easy to miss the target if they move in any way. So it's going to take some time for you to get used to that and to figure out exactly where to position yourself and aim at the target in order for that follow-up hit to always land. Because without that follow-up hit landing, it becomes a pretty poor ability. We remove that and you can see its score versus the others here. You would be better off with Yaksha Rush. So do your best in the content you're in and land that second hit. And when you do, this is pretty much the best ability for the amount of damage it deals with just 15 vitality. The only issue is you can't spam it enough. The cooldown is 12 seconds, and that means you need to find something else to spend your vitality on, because you will generally get more than enough vitality to cast this ability along with something else. So then we look at what are supposed to be the single target burst abilities. We have Dragon's Breath here. I have it on maximum tier 3, and it gets a new effect where ignition can stack up, dealing an extra hit of damage and increasing its duration. But you're going to have Drunken Poet to actually increase the duration, and with it being upgraded to tier 3, it gets an additional damage boost on every hit. And this combo gets seriously strong. You put the burning on the target, and then you could just spam Drunken Poet for all the vitality you have left, and you will deal a ton of damage output. You can see the stacking up of the ignition. We have 10 stacks. That doesn't increase the damage of the burning, unfortunately. It just increases the duration, which allows you to not have to cast your Dragon's Breath again, which does save you on vitality then if you could just always cast enough Drunken Poets. However, what's also really good is Dragon's Breath, but by itself. This is just extra damage over time at not that high of a vitality cost. You can see the data for that here, and it's like nearly 300 vitality score here. And you can compare that versus the others. It is, yes, a bit behind Soaring Spin, but again, Soaring Spin is stuck on that cooldown. You can't spam it enough, and you want something else. So Dragon's Breath is definitely an option, and you will see many people use it. And what is neat is if you have even more vitality to spend, you can potentially use Drunken Poet and animation cancel it. You cast it, then parry, and then you can cast your Dragon's Breath instantly and parry to cancel that animation as soon as you've put the burning on the target. And that's because you have Intoxicated, which allows you to just insta-cast your Dragon's Breath without having to say drink, because you've already drunk from the Drunken Poet ability. and the animation of the drinking from Drunken Poet can be animation cancelled. Just be aware, however, if you do want to do the animation cancelling of Drunken Poet to get intoxicated to then cast Dragon's Breath, you are wasting 10 vitality. It costs 10 to get intoxicated and then 20 for Dragon's Breath, even though you are already intoxicated. You can see that here, we start with full vitality, use 10 by casting Drunken Poet, and then use 20 by casting Dragon's Breath. But ultimately, if your build is not so great, and you're not so sure about what rotation you're using and you don't optimize it so well, on top of the fact if you can't land the second hit of Soaring Spin, it can be totally fine to just use Dragon's Breath plus Drunken Poet. It's still pretty vitality efficient, putting that burning on the target and then dunking on them with the Drunken Poet. But then we have Dragon Head. This ability you actually can't use right now, but you can max it out already and we can see how much damage it theoretically would deal. My only issue with it is the long cast time, and I don't know where's the point that you can animation cancel it. On top of the fact, it costs a whopping 100 vitality, and you can see that makes it not very efficient. In order to actually reach 100 vitality, which we can't do right now, at least that I'm aware, we have to wait for the next breakthrough, which is in 8 days, and that will allow us to unlock via the Melodies of Peace this one for that 10 missing vitality. But yeah, I'm not sure how practical this ability is going to be. It'll probably deal a ton of damage and it'll be good for burst damage, but with a cooldown of 2 minutes, again, not very practical. Finally, there is a support ability here that does damage, the Honking Havoc, which could add up to a bit when you get it upgraded to tier 3, but with 70 vitality cost, it's not efficient whatsoever. So we end up with a table like this, and we can sort them. So we go here, and we'll find Soaring Spin is undoubtedly the best, as we went through. And that's followed by Dragon's Breath plus Drunken Poet. It's not that far behind, so by all means just use that rather than Soaring Spin if you don't like its animation, and if you find you're just not landing that second hit. Because if you're not landing that second hit, you can see its efficiency for vitality goes way down. And there are a lot of fights where the bosses move, even just slightly, and you end up missing that follow-up hit. But yes, you will usually pair Soaring Spin and Dragon's Breath together as your main vitality consumers, as those are pretty much the best two to be using for efficiency. That would be followed by Dragon's Breath plus Drunken Poet. It's going to consume a lot of vitality, but the cast time is significantly longer than these other combos. So it may depend on your build whether you want to go for that or not, whether you actually want to spend your vitality on that. But it definitely solves the issue of missing with Soaring Spin, which I would say is kind of a noob trap, since a lot of new players, especially in uncoordinated groups, are going to miss that because the boss will move a tiny bit and oops, or you don't aim it properly and oops. This is then followed by Guardian's Palm, but like we mentioned, you're only getting these damage numbers when you're doing that big fancy animation here by leaping into the sky. And some fights you probably can't even double jump, so you won't be able to get high enough. You do always have the option to do the 3 meter height version by first casting Cloud Steps. That will get you just about high enough to be able to get the lamplight hit. I just now added the 3 meter version, so that's this hit here. And yeah, it's not any better than Talon Strike. Very inefficient and definitely another noob trap here. And yeah, then it's just Yaksha Rush, again without the block breaking effect that you could have in PvP. It's otherwise really high damage in PvP if you do break somebody's block. Really efficient there, even higher than Soaring Spin. And Leaping Toad just kind of has too long animations, same with Flaming Meteor. Free Morph's too costly. And yeah, I also done some tests here against the boss, 10 tests for each of these combos, and we were getting the average and then the vitality efficiency for that, and it still turned out Soaring Spin, followed by Drunken Poet and Dragon's Breath. Although Guardian's Palm turns out a little bit better than what I would calculate here, and I'm pretty sure that's just because the randomness on these hits, and we probably got more lucky high rolls on our base damage and some crits and affinity damage. And so that's where those tests can have errors unless you have a build which has minimum physical attack greater than your max. Then you will have always fixed damage, and that's when you can test properly. But yeah, ultimately, I hope this clears up as to what mystic skills you should actually be using. The TLDR is the most optimal strategy is Soaring Spin plus Dragon's Breath. Cast this one every 8 seconds to maintain that damage over time on the target, and cast Soaring Spin off cooldown every 12 seconds. If you have more vitality than that, you can use Drunken Poet to animation cancel and get intoxicated, so then you can more quickly cast Dragon's Breath. And alternatively, you ditch Soaring Spin and you just use all your vitality after you put burning on the target to use Drunken Poet, getting all those extra explosions, and it's pretty massive damage output, combined with extending that burning. But if you really don't want to go with these 3 different abilities, you're left with choosing Yaksha Rush, Free Morph, or Wolflike Frenzy. You can see I ranked the different abilities here. I have the viable options in bold. These ones are just not really so. And yeah, this is where you can see their efficiency for how much damage you will gain per vitality spent. Just be very careful if you are going with Soaring Spin that you are actually landing that follow-up hit. If you find yourself consistently not doing so for whatever reason, then it is not worth using this ability. You're only getting this 300% versus like this ability already straight up 347%. And additionally, you may have seen people suggest to use Guardian Palm, and even combining it with Cloud Steps, it just ain't worth it. It's even worse than the aforementioned alternative options. Finally, a quick tip on actually upgrading those mystic skills. You might be missing these level 3 Ebon ore. All you have to do is to make sure to do outposts. They give 19 per outpost versus the bosses don't actually give any Ebon ore. So you will just have to do 5 outposts for every mystic skill that you want to get maxed out on tier 3. Meaning, yes, 40 outposts to max them all, and you can already prepare to gather materials for tier 4. Getting these special materials are such a pain. If you want to get extra, you have to gather herbs, and there's only so many on your solo map. You probably get 5 or 6 if you're lucky after you collect every single herb, and then you can go to the multiplayer world, which may just be contested. But ultimately, I hope this helps to give some insight as to those mystic skills. Don't be sleeping on your vitality. Make sure you're actually using it when it's available. It can provide quite a lot of damage versus your other weapon abilities. So with that said, thanks for watching. A special thank you to all these channel members, and we'll see you guys around.